Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Norty Cohen, who is the CEO of Moosylvania and the author of the Participation Game, as well as Join the Brand. Norty, thank you for joining us today on the show.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, so as we were just chatting here before we got started, I just love your research background and the academic side of the business of marketing, because too many times I think people just take marketing and they treat it like, let's throw it up against the wall and see what works. But when we have a quantitative metrics and numbers that substantiate some of our marketing, now all of a sudden we've got something to sink our teeth into. So give us a little bit of a background on yourself and kind of where that research comes from, and then I want to dive into some of the key points of your book, Join the Brand, because I think that's just so cutting edge about building loyal communities and marketing to them.
Terrific. Yes. So I have an agency, and I've been in the creative business for my entire career, but there was a period where I had about 5 years that I actually ran a second business, which was a focus group research business. And over the course of that, I learned how to find information that was difficult to find and developed a set of vendors to help go after it. And one of the things that we really wanted to learn about 6-7 years ago was, how do consumers truly adopt brands? What is really happening in the context of brand adoption? And what we were seeing was that the traditional methodology of dropping points on a market and expecting consumers to sort of interpret messaging, et cetera, wasn't really going to play out long term at all. And we wanted to find out how they truly were adopting brands. So we developed a methodology with one of our vendors in which we asked consumers, name your 3 favorite brands unaided. And so ultimately 3 empty boxes. We focused on millennial consumers, and as has happened, we've tracked that group since 2013, and each year we talk to 1,000 of them. So they go to the survey. It's all mobile based, and they fill in their 3 favorite brands. From there, we do pull down menus to ask different kinds of questions that we have every year about where are you connecting, how are you connecting, why did you connect with that brand. And I think that the really key thing is that when we asked them about brand adoption, it was 2.5 times more likely for them to adopt a brand based on what their friends and family were saying than what they were getting from YouTube, Facebook, and television advertising combined. So all those numbers of how did you learn about the brand, why did you adopt it, was all really centered on what were friends and family saying. And as the years have gone on, as smartphone technology has gotten faster and faster, this is something that we're really starting to look at. I mean, one of the things that came out this year was that consumers are now spending literally a day a week on their phone. And that's all consumers, and 20% are spending 40 hours a week on their phone. There's a lot to compete with if you're a marketer.
Let me ask you a quick question on that. The millennial focus and the influence of friends and family. I would say that you would agree with this, but I want from the analytical side. That's not only millennial focused. Don't you feel that the biggest influence of buying decisions, really is spread across all demographics, not only millennials? We're finding that Facebook ad campaign can just draw some clicks, but not true engagement. And if you want to market to 55 and older, or 21 and under, or whatever demographic, it still is that friends and family, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we did just for the purposes of research was to limit the audience that we were talking to. So, yeah, we focused on millennials, but at the time, we really felt that they were going to be the earliest adopters that we could legally talk to. So when we started talking to this audience, they were 13 years old. And so this year we're looking at, in 2019, we'll be looking at 19 to 39. Mm-hmm. But we look at them as really just sort of being emblematic of what everyone does.
Yes. Because I think that if from a broad stroke of, hey, let's advertise to A demographic. Let's throw up some pay-per-click ads, Facebook ads, Instagram, whatever the case is, and hope for the best, or whatever. And, hey, the campaign's not working. So what have you found is then effective if you want to really cut deep and go right into that inner sanctum of friends and family? Because in reality, we don't need to pay some big star, the influencer, to tote our wares. We just need to get the people talking, our raving fans, our tribe, whatever you want to think of them as. But from a marketing standpoint, how do you get those customers of yours to talk about the product so that they influence their friends and family?
Right. So one of the sort of precepts that we developed in the first book, was this concept of you don't think about your target market, think about your target's target. Who are they going after, and how do you fit into that world? And one of the things that we began to see when we started saying, who are these people that really care about a brand, and why do they care about a brand, and what are they doing about it? What we started to see was this sort of transfer of identity. And when we look at fans of a brand and people that are willing to wear the brand's T-shirt, which is a huge test, if they're willing to wear it and badge themselves with it, what does it say about them? If we combine that sort of natural human need with what's happening, behaviorally with smartphone technology, almost everything that's in the human need set can be fulfilled by this sort of messaging. So to get back to your question of where does the friends and family piece fit in, one of the things that we look at is, if you go back to Maslow, there's like 5 steps of human need. The first is food and water. The next one is safety. You don't want to get eaten by a wild animal. But after that, you're right in there. And then the next thing in Maslow's hierarchy is belonging, then esteem, then self-actualization. So all 3 of those fit perfectly within what you get when you're sharing your own content within your own community, with your own friends and family. So we never like to think about paying influencers at all, because to us, all consumers are influencers, and they're all pushing out messaging at a much faster speed than a marketing campaign could begin to pivot. There's too much content being pushed out by friends and family. The only way to get there is to join them and do things with them. So, one of the things that we established in the first book was, as we looked at the top 100 brands that came through our surveys of saying, who's your favorite brand, and we evaluated what they were doing, what we found was there was this notion of participation. Consumers found a way to sort of connect with that brand and do something with them. They weren't simply just talking at them, but they found some sort of communication platform with them. Then as we began to look at that and say, well, what's the next level? How do you get to these consumers who are really super fans, who are saying, this brand is me, everybody that knows me knows I'm part of that brand. Now you're in that friend set, now you're getting there. And as we looked at the best cases of brands that had really developed brand communities, we kind of developed a formula. And it's really a pretty simple 3-part formula. So it starts off with Ignite the Fire, which is, what's your brand story? Can you tell it in a way that people truly believe it, that they want to be part of it? The next one is called Fuel the Flame, and that's where you start doing things where you can connect with consumers and they can find ways of connecting back with you. And the final one is Pass the Torch, and that's where you've created influencers. And so, I could give you a quick example of each one just to kind of give you some a notion of it. If you look at Ignite the Fire, one of the ones that we talk about all the time is Tito's Vodka. Tito's markets themselves as the vodka for dog people. And if you go buy a bottle of it, you will see it on the bottle. And if you were going to start a brand today, would you say, which pet do we want to make ourselves the official product for? It's a crazy notion, but it's a true story. The guy was developing the vodka. There was dogs on his farm. More dogs came. He took care of them all. And now he made himself the vodka for dog people and has a literal tab on his website with that on there. So there's a true story that people can relate to. In the context of Fuel the Flame, the easiest one to talk about is Starbucks has a tab on their website called My Starbucks Idea. That's where those little splash sticks came from. That's where cake pops came from, but pumpkin spice lattes. These are all things that people ask for. So 270 products have been developed by Starbucks with a simple little form that is literally, there's no graphics to it. It's just submit your Starbucks idea. 150,000 ideas have been given, but they found a way to connect.
That submit an idea, do you know whether they get any kind of recognition, thank you, or anything like that?
I'm assuming that they get something, but I don't think that they're not doing it to. I mean, I've seen cases where, K-Swiss did a program where develop our next shoe design and you'll get 2% of the shoe. I mean, you could go that far with it.
I was even thinking,
I don't think you have to.
Tweet. Yeah, like I was even just thinking like a, thank you so much. What an awesome idea, Tom Smith or whatever. Because here's where I'm wondering what you're talking about with the influencers and the friend and family and the mobile. We want to make it easy for them to do this. Well, I think that you go back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of the aspects is kind of like recognition and achievement and accomplishment,
Sure.
that kind of thing, right? Well, isn't it true that we all, in fact, one of the pet peeves of social media is, are you serious? This post on Facebook is about your whatever, and you just know that person posted it so that they can watch the likes and the comments and the shares and the, oh, wow, I get that validation, right? Well, why can't we as marketers use that same concept and go, hey, if you like our XYZ product, whatever, here's what you can do. We'd appreciate it. And I would venture to say that if that user then is able to push that out to their networks, they would get that same endorphin rush, dopamine rush when people go, oh my word, I can't believe I used that as well. Thank you for turning me on to it. And it's a benefit to then the user because they get appreciated, and it's a benefit to the brand.
Right. So one of the things that we asked consumers, one of the years that we did this exercise is we said, have you ever had a truly two-way conversation with your favorite brand, and if so, what was it? Yeah. And out of 1,000 people, we had 16% say yes, and we said, okay, what was it? And some of them were, they retweeted me. Yeah. Like that was it. That was truly right. A meaningful relationship with a brand. So it really doesn't take much.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because I was talking literally, I was on an interview about an hour ago with Bob Bethel, who has been a turnaround expert for 50 plus years, working with 77 plus companies, just transforming the business. And one of the big things I said, hey, what is the thing you walk into a business and it's just crumbling and you need to turn it around? What's the first thing you do to start with? And he's like, there's not one specific thing, but I'll tell you what I don't do. I don't bring in new people or spend more money on advertising until we fix some things in the business. And most of the time, it's the basics, the blocking and tackling. And the problem is so many times marketers or business owners or entrepreneurs don't do the basics well because they think, oh, that's too easy. Well, if it's easy to do, it's easy not to do. And you just nailed it with what you said, where some brand, they are missing out on, looking at their target audience and hit retweet. That's a simple thing. You can have your staff member do that, but if that simple gesture makes you feel like your brand is connecting with the customer feels they were heard, wow, that doesn't take much effort at all.
So, one of the things that came out over the last couple of years is the context that the attention span is now, the average attention span is less than a goldfish. A goldfish has 9 seconds, humans have 8. So one of the precepts that we've been talking about in these books is it's cheaper to give attention than it is to get attention. So to your point, giving attention can be the way to get there. And just to kind of get back to that formula that you asked me about, the third thing in the formula was pass the torch. And the best example of that is the publication Skim. The Skim is an email newsletter that is supported by advertising, except there's no ads. They simply weave the advertisers into the content, and the only way to get the stuff that they're talking about is to become a Skim ambassador, and the only way to become a Skim ambassador is to recruit 10 of your friends to sign up. So they've got 12,000 Skim ambassadors that we identified, and 15 million people on their site. So they basically put this thing together where there's this on-swell of people constantly being recruited, yet they don't pay for it. And I think that's the most key thing for marketers to look at is how do you get people talking about you and how do you motivate them to talk about you?
Well, and it's kind of what you just said there reminds me of something that you read or heard from Seth Godin, about being remarkable. And it's like, well, you can think and bang your head against the wall, but first and foremost, you need to have something worthy of being remarked about.
Right. Yeah. And, and that kind of goes back to the same formula. So ignite the fire. What can you do that's interesting, and fuel the flame? Then you can do all kinds of great things with fuel the flame. Like gaming is a great concept. When you can get a consumer to play a game with you for 8 minutes, it's a completely different experience than asking them to watch an ad.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what if that game somehow was gamifying your product or service, or maybe there was in-app ads, and so somehow you're getting someone to have an experiential interaction with your company rather than shouting at them with an ad.
Right, exactly. So Chipotle, obviously, they had all kinds of brand and product issues for a couple of years, but they executed this game, which was called the Guac Hunter, like guacamole. Then they did another game after that, and all these games were all basically HTML. They all sort of just sit right there on the web. You don't have to download an app in order to play them or anything. But the net of the game is you play this quick little game, and it nets out a coupon. And it's fun to play, easy to play, and people were part of it. And that whole context of I know that you know that I know that we're just having fun with you is a completely different feeling than hi, we're dropping a message on you. And
it kind of ties right back into the old product placement in movies and TV. You can have a commercial and people zone out, but if the character in your favorite TV show is drinking whatever drink, coffee, wearing whatever, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's way more effective because it pierced through the sales resistance.
Right. So one of the things that we did in this last piece of research was, we try to identify the difference between fans and superfans, and we did some qualitative and we did some quantitative where we talked to people who were completely inundated with what the brand was and why that brand stood for them and what they were willing to do for the brand. And we got a real sense that once they do that, they have this feeling, like we asked them questions like, do you mentally smile when you see other people using your brand? So like an example of that is like the Jeep Wave. If you know any Jeep owners, but there is a special wave that Jeep owners have between each other, and you may have seen it on a bumper sticker because they made it into graphics, but it's like a 2-finger wave. And so they see each other and they have this little wave. Well, what does that do? I mean, it simply gives them a reinforcement that they're part of something, and that just to be in that zone doesn't require advertising. It just requires being part of that community and helping to foster that community.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's just unbelievable what you can do, and your mind starts feeling blown when you think about all the things and the technology, right? But I think that if we can zero down to one of the points we made, which is if it's easy to do, it's easy not to do. And kind of like the point you made about, hey, this person, these 16 or 17% of the people that say, I had a meaningful interaction with this brand, and oh, what was that? Yeah, they retweeted me. Wow. That's easy to do. So these brands, these marketers, these companies need to be thinking about ways that they can interact with their target audience, or however you want to view that. I think that's just a stellar takeaway. Any final thoughts that you can give us? And also, what is the best way that our listeners can reach out to pick up copies of one or both of your books?
Sure. So the last that I would give you is that one of the things that I get the biggest kick out of is when I have a marketer that will use sort of an in-the-know wink at you. And so one of the things that we see is like Southwest Airlines. Like if you tweeted Southwest Airlines, sometimes they'll just have like a little gif of a flight attendant waving and winking back at you. And it's kind of like, I don't even need to communicate with you. I'm your friend, and you're my friend, and here's a little thumbs up wink thing coming back to you. Like, they're so aware of who you are that they can just wink at you, and it makes sense. Yep. So all of our stuff is available. I have a site called nortycohen.com, Norty Cohen, Cohen, which shows where the books are. They're on Amazon. They're at Hudson News right now, on Barnes & Noble, some other private independent booksellers. Both those places, Join the Brand is really the brand community book. Participation Game is really focused on all those years of research in establishing participation as a model.
I love it. Norty, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed chatting, and I love where all of the research now is coming to light with how to really implement it and get attention from your target audience in meaningful ways. So thanks again for your time, and I really look forward to reading through your books, and hope our listeners will pick up copies as well.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the time.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.